Cultural Star workshop. We are recording this, so it would be very helpful if everyone kept yourselves muted unless you were asking a question, so that we have a clear recording of this whole session. And since there are so many of us, we're not going to have time to do introductions amongst all of us, but I would love it if you would introduce yourself at some point during the presentation in the chat feature and give us your name and the organization of which you're representing. That would be wonderful. And otherwise, I want to just welcome everyone. It's good to see so many people here. Thank you for coming. I hope you are armed with questions, and we have a thorough presentation ready to go. So I'm going to just start by introducing myself. I'm Jessica Larson Johnston. I am the program coordinator for Cultural Star. My team is also on this call, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you so you can see who all is on the Cultural Star team, and I will first pass it over to Grace. She's coming.
Hi there. Sorry, my mute button was covered up because of all these lovely people putting their names and organizations in the chat. So sorry for the pause there. But hi, everyone. My name is Grace Bubel. I am a project management technician for the city's Planning and Economic Development Department. And I've worked with the Cultural Star program for a couple of years now. And I just love being able to learn about all the fantastic opportunities that are taking place in our city. So thank you so much for joining our info session today.
Thank you, Grace. And then Nancy Vang.
Hi, everybody. I won't have my camera on today as I'm managing the PowerPoint presentation here, but my name is Nancy and my title is Management Assistant 1. I assist with both STAR programs, the Neighborhood STAR and Cultural STAR programs, doing a lot of the background work here, but I also occasionally manage some Cultural STAR projects too. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Nancy. A little bit later in the presentation, we'll have Mark introduce himself. He is with Risk Management, and he will cover one of our insurance slides further down the way. And otherwise, welcome. I know people are popping on as we go. Please keep yourselves muted if you can during this presentation, and please introduce yourself in the chat so we know who's here. And I am excited for this round. This will be my first round. I've been in this position for 3 months. And before that, worked for the city in a separate department, but I'm excited to be on board with Cultural Star and excited to go through this presentation with you. So our agenda today is to welcome you. I also I don't think I saw any of our Cultural Star board members on, but if I'm wrong, Nancy or Grace, let me know, and I'd like to introduce any of them that end up popping on. But if not, we will then go through just the overview of the Cultural Star program. So we'll just touch on history, and we'll touch on the timeline and program goals, project types, the cultural district, and guidelines. And we have a few slides about compliance and insurance requirements, and then several slides that can help you navigate Zoom grants, which is our application process. And then we should have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So here we go. So a little history on the Cultural Star program. In 1993, the Minnesota State Legislature authorized the City of St. Paul to levy an additional half-cent sales tax to make improvements to the St. Paul River Center complex, and also to create the sales tax revitalization program, which is what we call STAR. And STAR is made up of Cultural Star and Neighborhood Star, and our program coordinator for Neighborhood Star is also on today. And so thank you so much, Erin Lewis, for being with us today, and one of her project managers, Naya, is with us as well. So the STAR program has three really, I think, the best features of it are three things I like to talk about, which is it targets, for the most part, nonprofits nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. 80% of our funding for Cultural Star directly into the cultural district of downtown St. Paul. We have some slides further on in the presentation where I will go into that at more depth. And then it's really a neat feature is that it's not only for capital expenses, but it also funds programming and operating expenses. And that can be quite unusual. We have all of our information on our website, and we tout this website often, but it's stpaul.gov/cultural star. Oops, if you guys could keep yourselves, yeah, can we mute if possible? Thank you. So on our government website, you're going to find almost probably everything that you could have questions about. Not only do we have guidelines for the various project types that Cultural Star funds, but there is a sheet that has a lot of frequently asked questions. We did a lot of work to get that updated this year for questions that we kept getting repeatedly, so we thought that would be helpful. You can see who has received awards the last few years, and that can be interesting to see who's been getting funded. You can learn about this Cultural Star board. There's tutorials on Zoom grants, so if you're having issues, there are quick links to get you help. There's also just resources there, like highlighting the libraries are a great resource for getting your application done. We are partnering with them with their community specialists. So if you need access to computers or you need access to a community specialist, they are there to help, and they can help with applications, and they can also help with residents in their native languages. So plenty of resources at stpaul.gov/cultural star. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about our program timeline. It's exciting. We're open now for applications. We opened on Friday. We are open until the deadline on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 4 p.m. sharp. We really stress to anyone who's asking and applying, please do not wait till the last day. We really stress to apply early if you can. We hate to see people wait till the last day and maybe there's technical glitches or something goes wrong, because the deadline is the deadline. And if you miss it, you've missed out on this cycle of funding. So please apply early and just not at the last hour. After the application deadline, just to give you a little idea of what happens, is that there's an internal city review at that point. And so my team and I will look through to just make sure that the applications are screened and checked for eligibility. There'll be a period of time that if something looks off or needs to be fixed, we would reach out to you directly, and you would have an opportunity to fix that. I'm going to, and again, just a quick reminder to try to mute yourself so that we have as clear of a presentation as possible. Thank you. And okay, so then that'll take about a week, but if there's something that isn't quite right, we will reach out to you. At that point, applications will be sent to the Cultural Star Board, and I will talk about the board a little further into the presentation. But everyone, just so you know, who submits an eligible application will get an interview with the board. And the interview is short. I would say there's probably around 7 minutes, under 10 for sure. And it's a really good opportunity for the board to ask clarifying questions that they might have from your application. It's a really good opportunity if anything has changed within your organization since you applied, that you can give any updates. This will be in person. It will happen in June, and we will get dates out ASAP. If you're applying and you're eligible, we will line up the dates and best fit an interview date that will work for you. And we did try doing it virtually last year, and we just had a lot of technical trouble, and the board really insisted that it's really nice to meet you all in person to get a better idea of your application and what you'd love to do. So then after that, they will give their recommendations to the mayor and city council, and we're hoping that timeline follows this, that it'll be July, August. And we stress it's tentative because the city council and the mayor's office have a lot going on at any given moment. And so sometimes it might take longer, maybe it'll go speedier, but that's our hope. And important to know that the earliest project date is August 1st, 2024. And the latest project date for this round would be July 31st, 2025 for a special project or a developmental and organizational development project. And if it's a capital project, you have 2 years. So the latest project end date for this cycle would be July 31st, 2026. And just to also stress that we have 1 round of Cultural Star in 2024. We had just 1 in 2023. Before that, we were doing 2 rounds a year, and but that has shifted now. So this is the only round for 2024. So the program goals for Cultural Star are to strengthen the arts and cultural sector, to promote economic vitality in St. Paul and support downtown as a vital cultural center. And we do that by building and diversifying audiences, producing a long-term impact, promote a broad range of cultural offerings, and leveraging additional financial support. And Cultural Star funds 3 project types. The first one is special projects, and that would be quality arts activities in any discipline. It's probably our most common category. We fund an array of projects, lots of performing arts and festivals. Again, if you want to see some of those special projects that have been funded in the past, it's on our website. The second project type is organizational development, activities to strengthen, grow, and develop an organization. And some examples of that would be as if you were doing some strategic planning efforts. You might have a new staffing position and maybe you needed seed money for that staffing position. It could be a new computer system that will help facilitate the organization. But those would be a few examples of what would fall under organizational development. And then there are capital projects, physical improvements, permanently installed equipment or public art. And some examples of capital projects we've done build outs for dance studios. We've had projects that were improving the ADA, like ADA improvements to spaces. We've done lighting and stage equipment. It could be a permanently affixed seating structure in a theater. We do not fund musical instruments. We do not fund anything on a capital project that is movable. It has to be part of the building. Okay, now the cultural district. So this is where we get interesting and we end up getting a lot of questions. But the cultural district, 80% of our funds are mandated by our STAR law to be invested in our downtown cultural district. And so nonprofits and unincorporated groups with projects in or with projects in the district of downtown, the cultural district of downtown, get 80% of the funds of our Cultural Star. The remaining 20% would be for-profit businesses that are in the cultural district or nonprofits with projects in St. Paul, but they're outside of the cultural district. And our downtown cultural district is defined as the core of downtown. Here is a map that gives you an idea of what it is, but it's the geographic area that's bordered by Interstate 94, Raspberry and Harriet Islands, and the Lafayette Bridge on one side and Chestnut Road on the other side. So that boundary that I've just said and then on the map is the downtown cultural district. And just to give you an idea, right now, I wouldn't say it's 100%, but I would say the rough amount of dollars we have for Cultural Star this year would be in the 80% fund, it'll be about $800,000. And the 20% fund will have about $200,000. That may shift a little bit, but that's probably a good visual of how the dollars will map out this year. And in guideline summaries, we just accentuate that the eligibility project dates are August 1st, 2024 to July 31st, 2025, again for special projects and organizational development, and July 31st, 2026 for capital projects. If you are having an event or a series of events, if anything happens before August 1st, 2024, it cannot be funded out of Cultural Star. So it's just important. There might be an opportunity where you have lots of dates, but any of them that happen before August 1st cannot be counted in the funding. Our minimal request is $5,000. We have done away with the matching request, which was part of our program, except in large requests. So grant requests that are over 50,000 you must have matching funds and another source of income for another 50,500 for a total budget of at least 101,000. Anything 50,000 and below, there is no matching funds needed at all. Special projects and organizational development funds will get 80% advanced to them once our contract is signed. So if you are an awardee, once you are notified, there'll be an awardee workshop. There'll be a lot of resources there for you to help you with the process. You will be working with either Grace or Nancy, who you've met, or myself. And it will be 80% upfront, and then the 20% after the project and reporting is complete. The only time this might differ is obviously there's a lapse of time between the eligibility start date and when you might find out that you'll get funding. So that is just part of how this process works, because there are several months there. If you had your project and then it's over and you did get the funding, you could all of a sudden start the contract, close out right away, and you would get everything all at once. This is something that you would work out with your project manager. On capital project funds, it's a little different. Capital project funds are dispersed as the project expenses are incurred, and the match is accounted as we go. So now, like a lot of people ask, is how often and how many times can a group be awarded Cultural Star? And generally, an organization can only be awarded one Cultural Star grant in a year, and we have one exception, and that is with organizations based in St. Paul city limits, but outside the cultural district. We've created a way to tap into more funding since you're not in the preferred geographic area. So St. Paul nonprofits based outside can receive two, but the rule with that would be one project has to happen inside the cultural district, and the second project could happen outside the cultural district. We have a 3-year rule right now in place for Cultural Stars. So if you have had 3 consecutive years in a row with either special projects or organizational development, then on that 4th year, you have to take a year off. So if you are in a year where you've had 3 in a row and you had to take a year off, you still would be eligible for a capital project if you wanted. So in that sense, you wouldn't have to take a year off. We did a reset of Cultural Star in 2021 after the pandemic, because in 2020, everyone received OPS grants instead. So then we sort of reset in 2021. So actually 2024 is the first year we have a list of organizations that have already been funded 3 years in a row that unless they were applying for capital, would take this year off. And that is just to open up an opportunity to have other organizations get a piece of the pie. And so that's in play. And then unincorporated art groups and individual artists we want you to apply. And the only restrictions on that is that you have to use a St. Paul-based fiscal sponsor organization, and then 100% of your project must take place in the cultural district. So Springboard for the Arts would be an organization that is often a fiscal sponsor for individual artists. So that's one idea. And here's just a little bit about our board. Our cultural board is advisory. Usually the city council and the mayor take those recommendations very seriously. There's a chance things can hedge a little, but for the most part, their recommendations are taken. And the board is made up of 9 members of the community. They are appointed by the mayor and they make up the board. And there's 2 representatives from large cultural organizations, 2 from mid-sized cultural organizations, 1 from a small cultural organization, 1 representative from a philanthropic organization, and 1 representative from a St. Paul business community, and 2 at-large representatives. And at least 5 of the board members must be residents of St. Paul. The remaining 4 board members must work or live in St. Paul, and at least 1 must represent a neighborhood organization. All right, so once you apply and you're in the application, there are 4 criteria of which your application is scored on. And each of these criteria have 5 points total. So the application can not have more than 20 points. So 20 points is what would be a top leading score. You've gotten every point possible. And so it's impact, quality, ability, and diversity. The most important thing I would say, if you are new to applying for cultural stars, that when you're filling out the application, help us picture what you're doing. And the best way to do that, if you're not familiar with it, is there are 4 narrative questions that are part of the cultural star application. And those are directly helping you answer how you're going to give impact, quality, and ability and diversity with your project. So an excellent proposal for impact would be demonstrating how the project will benefit St. Paul, increase access to different art forms and cultural offerings, and addressing cultural needs in reaching audiences. And for quality, a strong proposal will describe strong goals and a plan to achieve them to have a successful project. And for diversity, an excellent proposal would describe a project that will be accessible to and inclusive of audiences and add to the artistic and cultural diversity offerings in St. Paul. And then ability. An excellent proposal would describe projects that are clearly defined with a realistic plan that could include timeline, personnel, publicity, financial support, and all of that together would demonstrate that your project will be implemented successfully. And now we have we're kind of just doing a condensed 1 slide on insurance, and I want to welcome Mark Lorenzen to our presentation. Mark is with the City of St. Paul as a risk manager, and all of our insurance requirements go through Mark. And so I welcome Mark, and if you want to do a quick intro, which I basically just did for you, and then you can talk about your slide. And you're muted.
And I'm muted. I have nothing to add. Thank you for that. And really, the slide is important, and I would keep it. But what I would suggest to everyone that's listening is we do have requirements for the grant program. My office reviews the insurance requirements for grant status. And the reason that we look at it, and I know a lot of the grant applicants, as you state, are nonprofits, and there are tight budgets, and we really are cognizant of that. And my feeling is I'm here to make sure that we are compliant, but I want to find a way to yes. So if it's a special project or a capital project, there's slightly different insurance requirements. The reason a 1.5 million on a capital project is the state of Minnesota caps liability that a city such as St. Paul could face in a lawsuit at $1.5 million. And so what the city's doing to protect itself is to require those that are getting grant money from the city to have insurance that covers any liability that the city would have if we're going to be giving out funds to help worthy projects. So that's why those are in place. I can tell you just as a start, a $1.5 million general liability policy is extremely difficult to find, if not impossible. But a $1 million policy with a $1 million umbrella is not. And umbrella policies are typically not expensive. So if you get to that point and we're asking you to get an umbrella, look at those. They're not particularly expensive. And we will evaluate your claim if you know, dependent on an ability to get that, but don't be surprised if you're asked to get it if your requirements are the 1.5 million. Auto insurance, again, very similar. A lot of grant programs under this program do not have fleet vehicles, and we don't really expect that to be the case. But if the contract is requiring that you use your personal, or you have employees that use their personal automobiles for the furtherance of the grant, then we'll just ask that you have insurance and that you're able to show it. If you could have a declaration page or just something that says, I have auto insurance and I have it at least at the state minimum. Again, verification of workers' compensation. It's often we see in the grant programs that organizations don't have workers' compensation because they're not required by the state of Minnesota to have it. The city will then ask you to fill out a quick certification form that lists the reasons why you're exempt from workers' compensation. The form literally takes 45 seconds to fill out. And so it's not onerous, but it is required. And we don't, the city, if it's going to be giving out grant money, doesn't want to then later have to pay workers' compensation benefits for your employees because you didn't have it and you're required to have it, or you didn't verify that you're not required. And finally, this seems simple, but the grant period, you may have a assortment of events, a series of plays or theater or whatever it happens to be. We want to make sure that the insurance that you have for those items are all within the time period of the project. So if you have a project you're asking a grant for and it's from June 1st of 2024 to December 31st of 2024 or longer, we will ask that the insurance also covers the entirety of the project. Happy to work with you. And really, I don't have anything else, Jessica. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And now you're muted.
Ah, yes. I will stress, thank you, Mark, for being here. I appreciate it. I will stress that Mark really tries to get to yes. So sometimes insurance requirements can be confusing or feel complicated, but please reach out to the team. This presentation will be available at our website. Mark's email and phone number are there. So we just want everyone to have a successful application. And if you get awarded and get under contract, we're happy to help you get through this process. But thank you again, Mark. This next slide is just going to be quickly on some compliance requirements. You have to hit certain thresholds for any of these to sort of start triggering it to be applied. So we're not going to go into great depth. It isn't with cultural star grants unless it's a capital grant. Oftentimes these aren't applied, but important information to have. But federal, state, and local regulations and policies pertaining to the use of funds, such as prevailing wage standards, affirmative action, and targeted vendor program may apply to your project. The amount of the award and the nature of the project, capital, special, or organizational development, will determine which regulations apply. And just for an example, the VOP gets applied when grant awards are over $50,000. This just maximizes contracting opportunities for minority-owned and women-owned and small business enterprises. And labor standards would be applied if you had a capital project with total budgets over 25,000. And that just the short explanation on that is contractors at that level are required to pay union level wages. Organizations receiving grants must comply with all federal, state, and local laws, rules, regulations in connection with your project, including but not limited to the St. Paul Vendor Outreach Program. It's important to understand that compliance requirements may affect hiring practices and wage rates. And Cultural Star applicants, we just strongly caution just to any commitments until compliance requirements and funding regulations are fully understood. And Nancy, we can move on. If anyone has questions on that, we can hit them. I didn't have anyone from compliance on this presentation because it oftentimes it isn't applied, but we have contract compliance contacts here. And if you had specific questions about VOP or affirmative action and equal employment opportunity or prevailing wage, we have wonderful city employees listed here that are happy to help and answer any questions you might have. And now the fun stuff, how to apply. So you apply either by going to our website and clicking apply, and it will shoot you over to Zoom Grants, which is the program we use for Cultural Star. And I'm going to have Nancy Vang kind of walk us through the few slides we have for Zoom Grants, and she has a lot of tips that will help you if you have not started your application yet.
Thanks, Jessica. So applications went live on Friday the 5th already. So you can go right to our website and click on the apply button. It'll take you right to Zoom Grants. But before you start an application, you need to log in or create an account if you don't have a Zoom Grants account. It's fairly easy to do. When you get taken to the application, it'll have all of this text that tells you you must be logged in to apply. So there are multiple places where you can log in or create an account, and you go through those steps and then you can get to the application. Some tips for you, as Jessica stated earlier, start and submit your application early to give a good amount of time to avoid or address any technical issues that might come up. You can log out and log back in to work on your application as many times as you need to before you submit your application. Your application saves along the way as you work through it, so there's no need for you to manually save anything. We recommend that you craft your narrative responses in a Word document or another program and not directly into the application. And then you can just copy and paste your responses into Zoom Grants. But before you do that, you just want to make sure you remove any special formatting from your responses before you paste it into Zoom Grants. Zoom Grants doesn't like things like bullet points, bold font, italics, or underlines, or anything like that. So just make sure all of that is removed before you copy and paste into Zoom Grants. If you need to make any updates after you've submitted your application, you can reach out to us and then we can reopen your application for you, as long as it's before the deadline. After the deadline's done, then you can't edit your application unless we are asking you to edit it for whatever reason, if we find anything when we are reviewing your application for eligibility. And as I said earlier, your responses will autosave as you work through the application. You know that your responses are saved when it flashes the savings symbol or text and then it disappears. It usually flashes for like 3 seconds and then you're able to work on your application again. And so that indicates it was successfully saved. However, if it continues to flash the saving sign, then it means that your response is not saving and there's an issue. So to ensure that you aren't losing your work, don't continue working on the application. some troubleshooting you can do is making sure that you have a good internet connection, and then also double checking that there's no special formatting or invisible characters in your responses. And then if you still continue to have issues, then you'll want to reach out directly to Zoom Grants. STAR staff does not have the ability to look at your application as you're working on it, so we wouldn't be able to see what your problem is. We can try to walk you through some of the troubleshooting as much as we can, but because we can't see your application directly, your best bet for technical issues would be to contact Zoom Grants, and they're really great at responding within 24 hours. And they're a great help. They also have a great help section. They call it Zoom Grants University, which has a lot of resources on, tips and tricks on how to make your application successfully submittable. Keep in mind, every question must have a response, and all required documents must be uploaded for your application to go through. It helps to click on the print preview link before you submit and just read through everything to make sure that you haven't missed anything and to make sure nothing got cut off. There is a character limit for some of the responses, so you just want to keep that in mind. If there's a document that is required and you don't have that document for some reason, don't upload anything like a blank document. Don't upload a document that says will provide upon request. This is our request. So if you don't have it for some reason, give us a reason. Upload a document and just provide in that document the reason why you don't have it readily available for us to review. And we can work with you on that. Again, here's Zoom Grants contact information. They're great at responding. They're really helpful. And for technical issues, they would be your quickest. They would be the quickest way to get your technical issues resolved. But you're more than welcome to reach out to STAR staff too if you're having issues.
Thank you, Nancy. All right. Well, when you reach out to STAR staff, here's how you reach us. It's Nancy and Grace and myself. And if you want to send us an email, it's ped-culturalstar@stpaul.gov. And the website, www.stpaul.gov/culturalstar, again, has an immense amount of resources for you. I want to thank Nancy and Grace for being here today. I think our last slide is just some next steps. And we'll hit that one. There we go. Next steps. So deadline, you have a little over a month to get your application submitted. And then we will notify you of an interview date, and you can respond to clarifying questions. And then again, we're hoping that the timing would be July, August, that we would get a mayor and city council decision. And then the ball just gets rolling and we notify awardees. So this concludes the official presentation, but we are all here to help answer any questions that you might have about the presentation, about anything that we talked about, or if there's something we didn't talk about. So raise your hand if you would. There's a lot of you on, and we'll just go orderly. If you have a question you want to put in the chat, that works too. Okay, James.
Hi, let's see, turn on my camera. Last year, it seemed like the word count function in Zoom Grants was a bit glitchy. And I wonder, do you know, has it been improved or fixed since then? And I guess if the answer is no, there's nothing to be done about it, but it would be nice to know going in, because I would have things the proper length and it would say no, and then they'd fit, but then it would say no, it doesn't fit, and it was quite kind of wacko.
Thanks for that question. I might defer to Nancy or Grace only because I wasn't around last year for Zoom Grants. I'm not sure if anything has changed since that round. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, so I don't think anything's been changed with Zoom grants. Sometimes it will appear that you have, that your response is within the allowed character limits, but Zoom grants can be a little bit finicky and tricky. Sometimes it detects invisible characters that we can't see, but their program can. And so in that situation, if that happens, you would just have to reach out to Zoom grants and they would confirm that for you. Because again, STAR staff, as the program administrators, we don't have access to see your application until it's been submitted. So if you're trying to submit and you've checked everything looks good to you, everything's got a response, all documents are uploaded, you can't figure out why it's not submitting, reach out to Zoom grants and they'll take a look and let you know if somehow a special character got put in somewhere or an invisible character got put in somewhere. And hopefully that will resolve it.
Did that help, James? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Nancy. DeWitt, I will take your question and then I'm going to head into the chat because we have a few questions in there.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. We have a few programs that run simultaneously. We have like a language school and also arts into dancing for kids that come from all around the place into our community center in the Midway area. Now, if I apply for, like say, for the example, for $40,000 grant, is it awarded in full, or can it be if it's deemed that you can afford to provide less than $40,000, you would consider that? Is it, in other words, is it all or nothing? And the other questions that the second question I have is in the categories of the project types, like a special project, organizational development, and capital project. We do struggle with the providing a space. Say if for a dance, if we rent a space, under what type of project would that fall, or is that funded? I understand that that would not be a capital project because it would be just a kind of a rental fee. Would that fall still in that special project because you're providing a space for dancing and so on?
Okay, two parts. So the first question about if you applied for 40,000, yes, there's a lot of instances where the board gives partial grants. So you may get a full grant, but all that will also depend on how your application scores out. Some people get full grants and some people get partial. I think they're really trying to give as many grants and inclusive to as many organizations that they can. So it won't always be full and it absolutely could be partial. In terms of getting a grant for a special project that had to do with a performance and then you're renting space, that is an eligible expense. And Grace, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but having rental space, because it's for your project, absolutely would be considered eligible.
Okay.
Did that answer both? You're welcome. Okay, just a couple quick questions in chat, and then I can go back to anyone else who has one. If we have a current Cultural Star Award, are we eligible to apply in this round? And the answer would be yes, unless you are you've had 3 in a row and you have to take a year off. But otherwise, nope, this is a separate round and you absolutely can apply. And another question is, hi, how do we know which grant is better to apply for? Also, can you apply for both STAR grants? If so, would it be best to split projects? What's better to apply for? And I'm assuming you're saying which grant in terms of which project type. And would that be a question? Like, is it better to do special, organizational, or capital? Is that the question? Is that the first part of the question? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. And the second part was, if so, would it be best to split projects? how do we know which grant is better to apply for? You can't apply for multiple STAR grants unless you're fitting into that. I'll answer this part first, into that area where we have made one exception, and that would be you're an organization that is based outside of the specified geographic area of the downtown cultural district. Then you could have an event. You could apply twice and have one event in the cultural district of downtown, and you could have one event that is outside the cultural district of downtown. And that would be the only case where you could apply for more than one. So in terms of splitting, not sure, without you chiming in again, if I'm answering your question the way it's intended to be asked. But I'm gonna keep going. And Grace and Nancy, you can also pop in. Yes, cultural or special. Between the two STAR grants, if you are a profit business, but you're applying to increase art in downtown, which is better to apply for? There is no, between special and organizational development, I don't think there's a hierarchy. I think more people we tend to give out more special projects because there's a lot of organizations that have festivals or performance-based projects. But otherwise, it's the quality of the application is the quality of the application, and the board isn't looking at, oh, it's organizational and not special, so we're not going to fund it as well. That just the strength of the application is what will hopefully get you funded. So I'm hoping I answered that question thoroughly for you. Okay, good. Okay, our project is already scheduled and straddles the eligibility expenditure period. Is it more useful to focus our request on the final phase of the project that culminates in performance, or is it equally compelling to focus the request on the creation process, which also has a natural break near the end of the eligible expenditure period? Is there a preference for a project that has clear ending performance? I might ask Nancy or Grace to chime in, only because they've had more years under their belt in terms of experience in rounds. Grace or Nancy, are you able to jump in?
Sure, I can take a stab at answering. Hi, Grace again here. Jenny, so if I'm understanding your question properly, I think first and foremost, just being aware that the grant can only cover expenses that are incurred within our eligible project dates is something to keep in mind. So you'd want to think about what you're requesting, the amount you're requesting, and whether it can cover work that will take place during our eligible period. As far as a preference of a project that has a clear ending, I don't know that I would necessarily say a preference, but it is appealing to have a project that has a public facing event component to it if you're applying for a special project proposal. Does that help?
Yep, that helped. Thank you, Grace. I'm going to do one more from chat, then I'll bounce out. Did I understand correctly that if we are located outside the cultural district, we can apply for 2 different grants as long as one of the projects happens inside the cultural district? That is true. Thanks for the question, Gretchen. And let's go to Lemuel. Hopefully I've pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, that was good. I had like a little question on like the criteria of diversity. And so, diversity can mean like a lot of things and various contexts. One plan that we have is like a language school for our community center. However, we have like a sort of aim that like, to promote the culture of like our national group, like among like the Twin Cities. other people of other various different ethnicity races are of course like welcome to join, but like that's like sort of like our like primary goal to like bring up the culture among like the next generation of people. And so I just wanted to know, with diversity, do you mean like sort of promoting the culture of like the national group are an organization is affiliated with, or promoting diversity to be like as inclusive to like many other national, ethnic, or racial groups in St. Paul?
Thank you for the question. I actually think that both are right. I mean, absolutely. I would either one of those definitions of diversity fit, and I would assume you would have the chance to score well on it. Our narrative questions about impact, quality, diversity, and ability have a limit, but I don't remember offhand what the word limit is, but it's pretty it's pretty big. I mean, that's not really the word I'm looking for, but there's usually, I feel like there's a good amount of room to really get your thoughts across. And I think either way, you would be you'd fit the bill for diversity.
Okay.
I'm going to go to, yeah, you're welcome. And I can't see everyone all at once. I don't know how long you've had your arms up, but I'm doing my best. I will go to Randy next, Randy DeWitz.
Hello, this is Randy. I work with traditional and cultural festivals in St. Paul, and I'm checking to see if any of the funding is available for handling police costs for those particular events. And I do have a second question too.
I believe the answer is no. I do not think that that is an eligible funding source. I mean, that wouldn't be eligible.
Okay, and the second question is, any of the funds available for helping in creating educational components for festivals and events and how to do better events in the city of St. Paul? Can any of those funds be used for training and teaching?
Grace or Nancy, with a little more experience, what's your opinion on that?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
I was asking to see if there's any funding available for doing training, education for community and cultural events in the city of St. Paul. I'd be working on training volunteers, helping them and guiding, how to do a better system, how to create a better event, and providing them better tools in creating a more successful event.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I would say let's get back to you on that one.
Okay.
That one's a unique situation, and you know, like we could bring it to our colleagues and to the board to see how they would feel about a request like that. It kind of straddles the line there of it being considered a special event, arts and cultural related. So we would have to hear more about it and then see how it aligns with the program and everything before we could say yes or no. So
Sure.
Let's talk some more about that.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it's a good question. My hunch is it would fall more in organizational development. But also I agree it sort of straddles a line a little, but we'll get back to you, Randy, if that's okay.
I appreciate that, Jessica.
Yeah. Caleb.
Yeah, hi Jessica, thanks for taking my question. I'm curious to just hear more about the evaluation criteria, and what if you could describe like what a really strong narrative would be in each of those four sections. I know you covered that quickly, but
Yeah, I really gave just bullet points. I would say, and I will defer to my colleagues and they can add to it. I think that what we really want to see in an application is just what does this look like? Why are you excited about it? What is it? You know what I mean? Like we just really want the best picture possible of what you're trying to do, and not have a bunch of fancy words that are just there for that, and it doesn't really explain what you're doing. And are you leaning toward a special project, can I ask, or organizational development or capital?
Yeah, so I'm with the St. Paul Art Collective. We do the St. Paul Art Crawl, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, thinking about how we can communicate the project in a way that that we're understanding that criteria and how to communicate that correctly. So I'd be curious to hear about like the type of narratives or even anecdotal types of things that the selection criteria or board gets excited about, or something like that.
Yeah, thank you, Caleb. I am, outside of just giving you the bullet points that I did, because I mean, the art crawl is amazing. I would ask Nancy or Grace, like, do you have just, they've had years under their belt of looking at other applications and what makes a strong one. But again, like impact, when I think of the art crawl, and again, we are here as kind of running the program. I like everyone to know, like, we're not scoring your applications. We are making sure they're eligible and that everything is all set so that we can kind of gift it up to the board, and it's easy to read and process. And we are there for the interviews, but we have no say in who gets granted funds and who doesn't. But like impact, like reaching audience, like just I would say like impact would be like, how many people end up coming to the art crawl? I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, like in terms of like drawing new audiences all the time, and the attraction there, and all the things that you offer in an art crawl would be important, because it's not just one kind. It's pretty expansive. And I mean, really, quality should talk about, and I hate to just repeat my bullet points, but just like your goals on how you're going to achieve a successful art crawl. Like, how are you going to do that? What are those steps? And diversity, again, just sort of feels obvious a little bit, just because you have an array of artists and an array of audiences that would come. And then ability is more technical in my idea, in that narrative, is just like, how are we going to implement the art crawl successfully? Like, what are all the little pieces, and the people, and the timeline, and other financial support that you have? That's important. I know the art crawl, you can't just do it for 20 grand. You probably have a lot of different funding sources. And when the board sees a project that has other funding sources, it makes them feel like, this is going to be successful, right? It's a lot of different entities working together. And I would invite Grace or Nancy to chime in if there was anything more you'd want to add.
I think that sounds great, Jessica. The only other thing I would add is that on the application itself, we do have some questions in that narrative section to kind of get you thinking about how to answer each narrative category. So you don't have to answer every single question that's listed under those questions to consider. However, those are helpful to get at what the board will be looking for. And each of those criteria are worth up to 5 points. So doing your best to get the essence of those questions in your responses, I think, is also a good way to think about it. And I'm going to step away for a second. My battery is about to die, and I didn't grab my cord, so I'll be back. One moment.
Thanks, Grace. Caleb, did that help?
Yeah, it did. And I guess one follow-up question is just between now and the application date, if there's any forum or opportunity to get feedback ahead of time on those criteria, or if it's outside of the Cultural Star, board's capacity or group's capacity, if there's any suggestions you have on how to pursue third-party support on that.
Absolutely, and we can connect after the presentation too. And happy to help, if you want to throw something by us. Again, I just accentuate that we're not the ones scoring it and doing the awards. So we don't want to steer you wrong, but absolutely you could send stuff to us to look at, and we could give some feedback in terms of just essentially administering the program and the highlights within the program.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Lemuel, I think Unless, do you have another question or is your hand just still raised?
No, I do have another question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I was aware. So, like, I'm just like kind of a little confused. Like, in our application, would you want us to focus on like us answering the multiple questions, or like to focus on how our project will fit each of those 4 criterias?
Can you kind of frame your question again?
Like there, like with the last person, you were talking about with him, how there's like multiple questions in our application, and
Mhm.
like, for our project. And what she stated, from my understanding, is that we shouldn't feel the need to answer all of them, rather than to just make sure that our project fits greatly the evaluation criterias. So I guess my question is, like, do you want us to put more focus on like on answering the questions, or like having our answers fit those 4 criterias?
Well, okay, good question. I think it's I think it's a combination of both, and hopefully what the narrative questions are leading you to is to just give the board a better idea of what the project looks like as a whole. So it's a hard question to answer because, they really want to hear from all the organizations, and we don't want everybody's project to look the same. Like, part of what's neat about Cultural Star is it can be so many different things and not repetitive, and have new cultural offerings out there. So I think, I just think that the narrative questions can be daunting, but they're just there to lead you through helping visualize the project for the board, and hopefully not to get too hung up on it. But I don't know that I'm answering this great for you, because it's sort of subjective to everybody's own application. But I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, okay, that answers it. So it's just basically like, don't get too hung up. Like, the question is just sort of there to give like a narrative on the application, to give a narrative on like what your project is.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
And if you have further questions, please reach out if there's still confusion when you're back in working on your application. And Caleb, do you have another question?
No, I do not. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, don't be sorry.
I'll put my hand down if I can figure that out.
No. There's a chat question that I'm going to get to next, and it says, can you give more examples of what would make a competitive application for the organizational development grant, especially around organizational infrastructure growing capacity? We want to make sure we understand where the board might draw the line between something that would be seen as helpful for the city versus something that would be seen as only helpful for their or organization, individual project, if that makes sense. Yeah, good question. And I will defer to Nancy, or I'm not sure if Grace popped on again, mostly because they've had more years under their belt through a full funding cycle, to know of some more specific examples in terms of organizational development. Nancy or Grace, I'm going to bat it over to you to see if you could help give some examples.
Sure. So in terms of organizational development projects, the board has recommended a variety of organizational development projects, and it can be training up your board to funding, or doing like a study on the necessity of a specific role in your organization and how that would impact the work that your organization does for the city of St. Paul. So the board is made up of a lot of folks who are in the same sectors that you all are, and so they understand the needs of your organizations. And so when they're reading your applications, and including for organizational development, they look at it, and they don't they don't look at it in terms of like, well, how does this benefit St. Paul? But more so they look at your organization as a whole and say this organization provides these kinds of services or this kind of what's the word, programming for the city, and so we want to support them in that. And if they're telling us that having this, having this consultant or having this creating this role in their organization is going to help them be more successful in achieving the goals that they have for their programming and such, then we want to take all of that into consideration. And that's what they look at when they're looking at organizational development applications. So I hope that answers the question.
Del, did that give you a better understanding? I'm hoping. Let us know if it didn't. A few more in the chat. For the application fee, do we apply and then send in the check? And great news, there's no application fee for Cultural Star. There is for Neighborhood Star. So Erin's on the call here. I know she gets lots of questions about that, but there is no application fee for Cultural Star. So that's great. An earlier question that I answered in the chat, but I just thought, well, maybe I should read it aloud, is someone asked, do we have to have the insurance, the additional insurance requirements before getting the grant award notice? And I said, no, you would need to have the insurance requirements in place when you are getting under contract with Grace, myself, or Nancy. I mean, you might have it all in place, but if you didn't, by the time you get under contract, that's when we would make sure the insurance requirements you're meeting. So I wanted to pop that one in. Otherwise, I'm not, are there any other questions? Let me know, raise your hand. Oh, here's one. If we have an annual event and have received the grant before, does the new application need to be based on a new idea first? First and the existing event. Nope, we have many organizations that do a repeat event, and nope, doesn't have to be a new idea. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But okay, I'm trying to zoom through. Anybody else have a question we can answer? And again, if we leave this presentation and you have all of a sudden you think of 3 other great questions, you have all of our contact information. This presentation will be saved and put on the website with all our other resources. So if you were like, oh, I want to see that slide again, you'll be able to go to the website and click on the presentation, and you'll be able to see everything we've covered today. And let's see what else. I wanted to make sure I said that. Thanks for the info. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. I am excited to see all of your applications. That's fun, especially my first year doing Cultural Stars. So I hope you all apply, and I'm excited to see what all your projects are. So if there's no other questions, I will stay on for another 30 seconds or a minute. Then if not, I'll pop off and then we're done. But thank you so much for joining. Yeah, we had a great crowd. Appreciate it. And thank you, Grace and Nancy. Thank you, Naya and Erin, for being here, and Mark. You're all very welcome. Here we go. All right, everybody enjoy the day. It's beautiful out, I think. It is. Yes, get out.